Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre here, and I'm in a very special place. I'm in LA, FP Journe Boutique with Laurent. Laurent, thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you again.
So what I wanted to do with this conversation, and I think this is a unique opportunity for those that don't know, Francois Paul's brother, and I think you have a unique perspective on the brand. What I wanted to focus on is we have some incredible pieces in front of us, but I also know that there's probably some people out there that have different levels of understanding of FP Journe. There's also been this changing landscape in the last 5 years with the brand, and I think it's getting a lot more attention, rightfully so. But for those people that have not maybe fully inspected this brand, and you had a clean slate to be able to present what FP Journe is all about, what would you say to those people? Maybe they're coming in, they're trying to learn more about the brand. What would you say?
We learn them, we teach them. We explain that everything is sold out for now, and they have to be patient. Back in the days, we used to have inventory. If you ask Francois Paul, Pierre, or myself, what happened to the brand and why we explode like this, we don't know.
You have no idea?
No. No, it's unbelievable. What happened is totally unbelievable. Innovation with Francois Paul is his leitmotif. So I guess the people have been, they said, oh, maybe I should take a look at that. But it's a little bit late. So the people have to be patient. Francois Paul is a different watchmaker than I think any other one. Mm-hmm. He always wants to innovate, but not by changing just a dial. You know, sometimes he does to please some people and make a limited edition. But if it's a limited edition, it's not going to be 500 pieces. It's going to be either 68, 69, or 99. This is our limited edition, not 500 or 2,000.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also, if I had to say why this has happened with the brand, I think there's a level of authenticity with what you're producing. You're not deviating from a path. You're staying to the course of what has worked, and you've remained there regardless of what has changed. And I also think that Journe and its pieces are so recognizable. When you see a Journe, you know it's a Journe. It's unmistakable.
For the people who know.
For the people who know, exactly. And that's part of the magic as well.
I met many. One day I was in the airport in Paris, coming back from Geneva, and I was in the Air France lounge, and a gentleman said, sorry, you have a nice watch, huh? I said, oh, you know the brand? We are very, very small. Mm-hmm. He said, oh yes, I know, but it's unobtainable now. I said, everything is obtainable. You just need to be patient.
So I want to start going through some of these pieces. I actually want to take the one off my wrist right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a wide range of different models in front of us, but I want to start with the Chronometre Souverain.
It's a lucky day. And I want to precise that all of those pieces are not for sale.
We had to make a lot of requests from individual owners of these pieces to make this happen,
Absolutely.
Which I appreciate. So for this first piece here, the Chronometre Souverain, I would say that this is, there's not really the emblematic, there's not a perfect emblematic symbol for the brand, but I would say this is one of them when looking at this model. It's one of the things I think about. I see your wall clocks everywhere. I think of this just dial design. But tell us a little bit about this model, and specifically we have the Havana version here, which is a later iteration in the model family, but tell us a little about this piece.
Francois Paul is passionate about the story of horology. So this watch is basically a tribute to the marine chronometer of the end of 18th, beginning of 19th century. It's a chronometer, high precision chronometer with a power reserve of 56 hours, a dual barrel mounted in parallel. Not to increase the power reserve, we are looking for accuracy, but it will deliver a more stable energy to the escapement, like we explained last time.
Yes. On
the Optimum. Optimum has got numerous
yes.
features.
But you have this torqued up mainspring, and as that is unwinding, the amount of energy that's being transitioned to that escapement is going to change based on that unwinding, and this is allowing you to have more of a consistent flow of energy down the gear train.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. Simple watch, time only, power reserve at 3 o'clock, which is pretty rare, and it was basically a mistake.
How's that?
When Francois Paul draws a watch, he always starts by the dial. He showed me a piece of paper one day, and he said, a long time ago, and he said, what do you think about this? I said, that's great. We're having dinner, we are having a couple of glasses of wine, and he realized, he said, oh shit, I put the power reserve at 3 o'clock. I said, yeah, that's cool. He said, yeah, but it cannot work. I said, I have an idea. I was not in the watches business back in the days. And I said, oh, I have an idea. put it at 9 o'clock. And he looked at me offended and he said, no, I like it at 3. I said, yeah, but it cannot work.
So the challenge was it's right over the crown stem. Is that part of the challenge?
That's correct, because the crown stem is going through the power reserve. So he had to make a bypass.
And he was able to do that. And I think the great thing about this watch too is the movement, and I look at movement, I mean, you have chronometric precision that you can lean on, you have architecture that you can lean on, and these are how movements can separate themselves. Then you have, of course, the finishing of the components. I think this has all of the things. And I also love that you see the two mainspring barrels, but then you have this open kind of like chasm between with this barleycorn. It's just very cool to show the gear train on the reverse side.
You made a good point, Teddy, and this is called a floating escapement that is completely isolated from the movement of the watch. And the energy from the barrels is dispersed through the escapement, through some wheels, of course, but they are between the movement and the dial.
You can't see them
No.
when you flip it over. It's amazing.
So the escapement is totally isolated from the energy. That's the beauty of it.
Wonderful.
Because a watch has to be precise, but it has to be nice to look at as well, whether it's the dial and the indication that you will get on the dial, and the movement, because it's a piece of art.
Speaking of so, do you mind if I ask you to take something off your wrist?
If you insist.
The resonance. So this is a phenomenon that even before the brand was a thing, this was a fascination for Francois Paul, the phenomenon of resonance. So let's break this down into 2 points. So we have the latest generation of the resonance in front of us.
Yes.
But could you talk about this phenomenon of resonance? I'm sure so many people come in here and are asking about, what is this all about? How does this work? What do you tell them?
Let's start with the first generation, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
It was 2 watches in one. Each side of the watch can be set up separately. You can have any time you want. It's got nothing to do with a GMT or UTC. So the whole idea of the resonance, when you move, each time you move, you create an acceleration. And if one balance wheel decides to go faster or slower, and reciprocally, they talk to each other. I say, no, you're going too fast or too slow, come back to me. No other choice.
So these two balance wheels that are in close proximity to one another have been fine-tuned and regulated to have frequencies that are going to mirror each other, amplitude is going to mirror each other, and with their close vibrations and proximity to one another, they almost self-regulate one another.
Absolutely.
And that's the craziness of it. And you're talking about just
so that
so
was,
close together.
That was absolutely. If there was room enough, you could put a piece of paper between the two. It wouldn't change anything. That's how crazy it is.
The vibrations are still.
Yeah.
And this is the latest generation. So
right. So that was the explanation of the first generation. Now this one. I mean.
Now so this is moving to a single mainspring barrel.
Correct.
And you have double remontoire system for each one of the balances.
Correct.
So that is inherently more challenging to pull off, correct?
Of course. If you look at in the middle of the watch,
on the flip side, yes.
On the front. Yes. So the energy, in this case, the principle remains the same, except that the energy from the barrel, because there is only one in this one, is splitted through a differential that is right in the middle of the watch. Split the energy, and it goes down to the constant force remontoire. Then from the constant force remontoire to the escapement. Sorry.
Yes, it's phenomenal. This is the watch that I think is most associated with the brand, personally. You might disagree, but I just think of the resonance. This is
no.
magical watch.
I agree. This is the fingerprint of Francois Paul. But there are so many other. The Optimum, but we talked about it, is absolutely fabulous. Well, this obviously is.
It's beautiful. I'll give that back to you.
Thank you.
Moving along.
Yes.
So let's transition into the Octa Lune. Tell us a little bit about this. And the density of that on the bracelet is remarkable. You
make musculation each time you wear that.
Yeah,
it's about 250 grams. But that's what Francois Paul called the Grand Tourisme of the watch, Gran Turismo. It's got the indication that you need a date, the time, small second, moon phase.
Yes.
For the romantic people. You know the story of moon phase?
Educate us, please.
All right. So the moon phase was invented for the merchant. They were traveling at night to position themselves on the market, etc. And they were looking for, in pocket watches, of course, they were looking for some kind of light And it was obviously easier to travel with a full moon than with no moon.
Sure.
So it's kind of poetic complication, which nowadays is not very useful.
But it's romantic, and I think it's one of the most beautiful complications. One question about power reserves and how the brand looks at this. So for one, 120 hours here versus some of the others, very different. But also, sometimes we'll do an inverse power reserve where you'll have the 0 and you'll...
Okay.
So what's the thought process there?
I'll explain you. This watch on the dial, the power reserve indicate 120 hours. And actually the watch will run for 160 hours.
Okay.
All right. But after the 120 hours, an adjustment may be made, but the watch will still run for the accuracy of the watch. This one is automatic, so it's got a big rotor at the back in 22 carats rose gold, and it's winding unidirectional.
It has a very unique finish to its side. It's not more of a linear pattern, it's more of this angular finish to the side of the rotor. What's the reason for that?
Design.
Just design, yeah.
Design point of view, it's pretty. We got the same on the door of the boutique. But if you look at it carefully here, the rotor is off-centered.
Yes, just slightly.
Slightly. It's a defect. No, I'm kidding. It's not a defect at all. It's just that if François Paul wants to add a complication to this watch by off-centering the rotor, he's just got room enough to add one if he wants to.
Beautiful.
Because all our movements are integrated. Some other brands will use modules. I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, it's a different concept. But François Paul doesn't like modules. He said, I'm not a sandwich maker, I'm a watchmaker. So everything is integrated. That's the reason why they are not too thick.
Yeah, it seems like he does not like a thick watch, which I appreciate. Speaking of, watches that are notorious for being thick, chronographs.
Yes, not this one.
Not the case with the Centigraphe.
No.
This is also such an important design for you all. Tell us about the Centigraphe and why it's so special.
But chronograph to 100 of a second. It is, the movement is super nice to look at. So on the subdial, the left-hand subdial, the hand will make 1 revolution per second. Right-hand side, we are measuring time at 100 of a second, so we don't need big scale. It's 1 revolution per 20 seconds, and the bottom one is 1 revolution per 10 minutes.
So what is the reasoning? Because you would look at many chronographs, the register counters typically can usually measure longer periods of time.
Yeah.
But this is a lot more about smaller periods of time.
Correct, 100 of a second. Who needs that? Nobody. But it's cool.
Yeah?
It was a challenge that was back in the days made by Jean Todt, very famous in Formula One business. And yes, François Paul one day, can you make a chronograph mechanical chronograph to 100 of a second? So, to do what? You have your electric thing, and I've been thinking about this, he made some research, and let's try it. In the beginning, you see the velocity of the second hand is very fast. So when you stop it, it's not something that's going to stop the wheel. It's a brake, like in a car. And because it was turning too fast. Then that's for the story that the hands initially were made in steel, but it was going too fast, was taking too much inertia, too heavy. Didn't like this. Then after that, he tried carbon. François Paul tried carbon, it was too fragile. And now the hands are in titanium for the chronograph.
To allow them to freely rotate, especially for that 100th of a second there.
Yeah.
And the movement on the back as well, just how much it fills up the case. It's beautiful. Vertical tourbillon. This is a complete marvel to look at. The open aperture, seeing this at 9 o'clock, it's stunning. Deadbeat second as well.
Constant force remontoire, as usual.
Yes. So the remontoire, that's something I also associate with the brand. So talk about that and the magic of just also off-axis vertical tourbillon and why this watch is so special.
Well, the vertical tourbillon, as I tell everyone, tourbillon in a wristwatch is totally useless.
Absolutely.
All
Totally
right.
useless.
Okay. So it's nice to look at, complicated, expensive to realize. Main difference in this tourbillon, whether it's vertical or horizontal, like in the past with the previous version, is the constant force remontoire. Constant force remontoire, we talk about this one, will take the energy of the barrel and deliver the second at the moment, the energy at the moment where the second passes. Mm-hmm. It generates a natural deadbeat second. The previous version of the tourbillon, okay, François Paul still love it, of course, but let me do something new. So he went vertical. And the difference, it's not major, but it's kind of cool, is whether you wear your watch on a pin buckle, like this one, mm-hmm. or on a deployant, mm-hmm. which, when you don't wear the watch, is gonna sit like this. There will be no change in terms of amplitude. Mm. So we are getting a little bit of more accuracy.
Interesting, very interesting.
So that's the whole idea. And a bigger power reserve as well. This one is 80 hours power reserve.
And then the red indication on the power reserve, could you just describe, because that's also an important distinction to make.
Yes, it's when we're getting into the red, the constant force remontoire, this complicated chain of wheel, may not receive power enough from the spring. There's only one spring in this, one barrel, mm-hmm. which is a spring. Sufficient energy to energize the constant force remontoire. So if you want the real accuracy, you need to get out of the red.
So what that's going to indicate to a wearer is that the energy is no longer coming from this additional remontoire that's going to have that gradual distribution of energy to the escapement. Instead, it's going to be coming directly from the gear train and the mainspring barrel.
Correct.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So if you want the absolute accuracy, get out of the red.
Words to live by. Finally. I feel like I have to start, have it introduce itself this way, so let's just be quiet here. Bonus points if you can figure out what time that was. Tell us about the minute repeater. It's beautiful. And specifically, this is a special one. Sapphire dial. Mm-hmm.
But minute repeater, everybody knows what it is, except that this one is exceptionally thin. 56-hour power reserve. So dual barrel mounted in parallel, minute repeater, 56-hour power reserve. You can manipulate this, the repeater, as much as you want per day. It will not affect the power reserve. It will remain 56 hours.
How is that?
Because it's got its own spring.
So the slide is creating all the energy. It's not isolating. It's not taking anything from the mainspring.
No, it's not draining the mainspring. It was different in the Grand Sonnerie in the past, but for this one, if you want, it's really a boring job, but if you want to agitate it every second, it will still remain.
It's typically a big concern for a lot of other minute repeaters. If your reserve gets too low, it could potentially damage the mechanism. If you
but this one is
totally isolated. The slide is running it.
Bulletproof.
It's amazing.
There's nothing you can damage in anything. And okay, so for the dial now, it's one day a friend collector, asked me, would you mind asking François Paul to open the dial a little bit to magnify the racks? I said, all right, I could do, but I need to find the right day. So I called François Paul, said, this is an inquiry that I have from this gentleman, and you think something is doable? And he said, yes, I can do something. I will not put a dial, so like this he can see everything. Okay, wrong day. A couple of weeks later, did you thought about what I asked you to magnify the racks? Yeah, I will not put a dial. Okay, another wrong day. You know, it happens sometimes. And one day he calls me, 3 weeks later. And he's like, I've been thinking. I said, about what? You're thinking all the time. The minute repeater. We're gonna make a sapphire dial. Okay, sapphire dial. A smoked sapphire dial. We don't have the capacity in our dial factory to create sapphire dials, so he asked some of his connections if they were interested to do that, and they said, absolutely, we will do it. But it hasn't been that easy. This dial, in certain areas like the power reserve and the small second, the thickness of the dial is 0.4 millimeters.
Wow. And you're trying to have this recessed area for the reserve and your sub-seconds.
And at the reserve,
And you're cutting this from sapphire as well.
yes, sapphire,
Yeah, that's remarkable.
is 0.2 millimeters thickness.
Wow,
Exactly.
it's beautiful. And how light it is, thin, stainless steel,
Yeah, stainless steel,
which is
absolutely.
not typical.
It's for the sound. It's for the sound. But, and
You signed up for this. We pulled that slide, that's all we have to listen to.
and there is something funny about this watch. I want to show you something.
Sure.
When you wear it on your wrist, activate the, because I don't want to drop the watch,
Yeah,
activate
sure.
the, sounds louder.
It does. It projects the sound off the back of your wrist.
Absolutely. It resonates against your bone,
It's beautiful. Yeah, I never considered the challenges of the sapphire dial and making those recessed areas, because what's the failure rate for that? It has to be crazy.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how many they broke before getting one installed into a watch.
Yeah.
And for the numerals, they are laser engraved and hand painted.
Wow.
But otherwise, it's not complicated enough, and it's not fun.
No, it's beautiful. Simply beautiful. Well, Laurent, thank you very much for this.
You're welcome,
This was
Teddy.
Very educational, and what I appreciate is this is, I think, giving people a better understanding what the brand has to offer. I adore this brand. I think from a design perspective, there's nothing else like a Journe. And in watchmaking, where it's so copy-paste, that's always very refreshing.
Well, that's not François Paul copy-paste. He hates that.
Well, I'm into that. Thank you, Laurent. I appreciate
You're welcome,
it.
Teddy.
Thank you, everybody, for
Anytime.
watching. We'll see you all next time.